Love it. Okay, yeah, we got a pretty big group today. So if someone would take attendance as usual, that would be quite helpful for me.
Can you share a link to the document in the chat?
Yes, of course.
The attendance.
Well, I would. I'm hitting enter and it's not working. Oh, that's cool. I can fill in the box, but I can't hit enter. So perhaps someone else who has the link could could send it out to the group. I'm on the web client because I'm on Linux right now, and I have seen this once before. I don't want to reload because I'm the host, although maybe that would be beneficial.
Okay, yeah, something's wrong with yours. I just sent out one. I found one, but it might be an old copy. Can somebody verify that's the? No, this looks correct.
Okay, but y'all can see my screen, okay?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, we're working on the same document. Yep, everything's good.
Cool. Okay, and is there anyone that we haven't really seen before that would like to introduce himself?
Yeah, Jason.
Hey, Jason, welcome. I'd like to, introduce Jason's a new member of our AWS team here. So now it's the four of us, me, Devin, Jesse, and Jason, doing our contributions to ROS 2. So this is end of Jason's second week now.
Yep.
And if no one else wants to, by no means required to talk. So let's get going. Let's take a look at the action items from last meeting, which was to post on discourse about alternate time zones for the working group. I felt slightly less than comfortable suggesting times because I'm very biased towards my core working hours. So I instead just put out a open-ended request for requests. So if somebody in a time zone that is inconvenienced by this one has a recommended time, I'm really happy to try that out. So we'll just see. That was on the next meeting post. So until then, and that was only last night, so I don't expect that we've gotten necessarily any responses yet. I was a little lagging on that, but it was good to catch up with. So then,
question. Does anybody not want your name in the document? If so, let me know. Just type it in the chat. Otherwise, I'm just gonna transcribe everybody.
Yeah, just try to.
The font's a bit small in the current view. At least
yeah, please. Whenever you notice that, just tell me to blow it up. I don't know what y'all are seeing. Yeah, there you go. So the next item was we got this new ROS-beg 2 Python reader and writer API, and it was causing build issues on Windows Debug and on the Clang build. And last I checked, we just got it disabled in the build for now. I don't know if there have been follow-up fixes since, because that was 2 weeks ago when we did this meeting. So at least the builds are passing now, but from my knowledge, I don't think we have fixes for it, just that the build farm is no longer broken. So if anyone else has more context on that, that would be useful, but that at least hits the action item of making sure the CI is passing. The next thing was we wanted a dashboard for the working group. I was realizing that the markdown file that we had been maintaining was really unwieldy, so I went ahead and created a GitHub pages for the working group. So it's just rostooling.github.io. And so this is an at-a-glance status for everything the working group owns. So latest builds, if applicable, any nightly end-to-end builds, code coverage, issues, pull requests, and then also looking at the builds from the build farm for Bloom released packages, which are not looking awesome for ROS-Beg 2 right now. That's something we're going to need to cover. I did a backport of the PyTest INI file for, what was it, JUnit or something. There was some backports that were required in a lot of packages to make the build stable after the fact. And I did that, and Eloquent's still failing, so I'll have to follow up on that. But anyways, this might be useful for folks to see where we're at. The source for it is in the same named repository. So if we go to GitHub, ROS tooling, and I think it's just rostooling.github.io. GH pages is the deployment branch, so this is just the actual build, but the source is on the master branch. And it's a really simple create React app, so it's really just got like one source file. So anybody who's interested in this or updating it, the entirety of the logic is in this, 200 lines or so of React. But it's nice because it's generating the dashboard badges, and you could just add an item to a list to get a new package reported on. So that's that. We have a dashboard now. The next thing was Devin was going to update the meta ticket for topic statistics with links to roadmap items. And I see that this was edited 2 weeks ago, which was the last meeting. And I think, yeah.
Yeah, I thought I did it all during the meeting.
Perfect. Cool. So we're all linked up in this meta ticket. Hopefully we can get time to work on that soon. We've definitely been resource limited this month, and I think in September as well. So the last thing from last time was we wanted to look at auto-assigning reviewers on PRs, because we've been having reviews go stale. I think it's just hard because we have a limited number of people reviewing a reasonably large number of projects here. And that's something I might like to talk about in this meeting, is how we want to manage the fact that the things under this working group are pretty different and maybe don't apply to every person who might want to review one of them. But what I was looking into is that we have a common .github repository under the working group. And that allows us to get common issue templates across the organization, which is nice, but it doesn't allow us to set a common code owners file, which I had been hoping, because that code owners file is how you auto-assign reviewers to pull requests. So what we would have to do right now, as it stands, is I believe we'd have to add this file to every repository individually. That should probably just be a one-time thing, especially if we do a common one where we just say this repo is owned by the reviewers team, because you can have it be owned by a team. Does anyone have any objection to that, or a better idea? I think I'd still like to go ahead and do that so that we have assignees for code reviews, but I didn't want to just jump on opening whatever it is, something like 12 pull requests to add this file without checking first.
Couldn't you do it from the organization GitHub, like the .github?
Yeah, this one. So according to the documentation, code owners is not one of the files that it handles.
Okay.
Yeah. What is it? GitHub, like organization issue template. I can never find the right.
And not even from the settings. Like, if I remember correctly, I think there might have been some settings, but that's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. No, so my understanding is that you can only do issue templates, the contributing file, and it's like a specific set of files. It's not the entire .github folder that gets synced into the repositories, which is annoying. I was looking around quickly for like a bot that might do it, but I couldn't find anything. So as best I can tell, we have to add it to individual repositories. If you want to take a second look at it, like maybe I missed something before I go ahead and open those, I would definitely appreciate the second set of eyes.
All right.
Yeah. And in terms of the ROS2 organization, the only repositories we have under there are ROS Bag 2 and the ROS Bag 2 Bag V2, the ROS1 reader. So those two are less of a concern. We can just add a code owners file to each of them for the ROS2 tooling working group subteam, which is in sync with our reviewers team right now. And we can add subteams to it. So I don't know. I mean, we could script it, but it should be fairly easy to keep those teams in sync. So we'll go ahead and plus or minus a double check that there's not a better way. We'll add the code owners file so that we can auto assign the reviewers team to the repositories. The thing that I was wondering about was there. Let's see. Do we have either of them on the phone today? We don't have Dan Rose, but we do have Christoph here. I've noticed that you and Dan, Christoph, have been making a lot of contributions to the CI actions, and I've really appreciated that. And I was wondering if you would be interested in doing code reviews. However, I know that doesn't necessarily mean you want to get pulled into reviewing, say, ROSBag 2 or the cross-compile tool contributions. And this is something I've been wondering about with this working group at all. And if anyone has thoughts on that, this would be a good time to talk about it, I think. Do we want to have separate reviewer groups for different projects? Or is it reasonable to expect anyone who wants to be a reviewer, an auto reviewer, to review everything under this umbrella?
I mean, for me, I don't mind doing some reviews, but yeah, mostly for these actions, these two actions. So I think we would need to split it up.
Yeah, well, that's I definitely wouldn't assign everything to you, but it's more like I've seen you making a lot of contributions, and so it'd be nice to sort of hand over some of the ability to approve and merge PRs. But I don't know if you want that for the other tools.
I mean, you can just. Are you talking about automatically assigning, asking me to review, or giving me?
That's what I was wondering about. Yeah, I mean, you can just review things and approve them, but right now our access for, say, merge access is based on the teams, and we're trying to have the teams be auto-assigned in round robin fashion to the reviews. That's not set in stone, but
yeah, well, maybe we can figure something out. But yeah, I wouldn't mind reviewing some stuff in the two actions.
Okay, well, we can probably just do. So that's what I was thinking. Maybe it makes sense to have a little sub reviewer group and say these are the action maintainers. And that way it's not conflating ROSBag with GitHub Action, which are just very different domains.
Yeah, makes sense.
Well, I don't have a strong conclusion on that, but it's something to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a discussion early on, and it's too bad that Thomas isn't here, because he definitely had opinions about this, of whether it made sense to have a working group that covered multiple different topics that didn't have its owners own everything. Yeah, he was under the opinion that, if we're going to be a working group and we're going to own these things, then the people in it should work on all the things, or at least be responsible for them. Whereas it definitely makes sense just from the consideration of what people focus on, that maybe we, as a working group, maintain a backlog for these various things, but not everybody who participates works on every part. I don't know. We can move on for now to the backlog part, which is definitely agreed on as adding value. So do we have, maybe I should add the link. What is that? And we look at all of the repositories, we will see that there are 12 new issues, and many of them are bugs. This is a concern. So I think what I'd like to do is get through triaging the new issues real quick, and then we can take a look at what's in progress or in review, see if it needs any unblocking. And a last thing that we can try to get to is checking on any PRs that don't have reviewers, and for right now, assigning them before we get the auto assign. I think that'll only work on new PRs anyways. So what happened with cross-compile release? This was, I thought we didn't need it, and I deleted the repository. And that was a mistake because it had been released into Dashing and Eloquent, though we decided going forward it's not a ROS package. Apparently it was still needed in Dashing and Eloquent. I restored a snapshot, but apparently it didn't contain everything it needed. So I'm going to have to figure out how to fix this still, which is probably just tagging those correct branches for the release. I definitely should have thought harder about deleting ROS distro repository.
In general, what we usually recommend people doing is just like archive the repo, close all tickets, pull requests, and then archive the repo. Then it's obvious to everybody, and
yeah, absolutely. So I now know better. That was just a mistake that I made. I did archive it for a while, and then I was cleaning house, and I was like, oh, we don't need this, delete.
It's always easy to give advice after the fact.
Yeah. So I had, someone had forked the release repository, which I don't quite understand why, but it helped me recover. Well, it first blocked me from recovering it because when there's active forks of a repository that you delete, you can't restore it automatically. For some reason, I don't quite understand GitHub that way, but then I used that fork to push the master branch, but I just need to push the other branches, I believe. So I'll take care of this. Okay, so so that's why I was hoping to see Dan maybe, because he's been making so many bug reports and contributions. But code breaks build on Mac and Windows, and he's using it to build Cyclone. Yeah, I don't think we need to run codecov on. Well, I guess there are different code branches for the different platforms. I'm not sure how we would consolidate the codecov across the different platforms that are running, because I think we're just getting separate reports for each run, which are maybe a little bit hard to correlate. So possibly we could just disable the codecov action on those platforms for now and use the Linux coverage as the canonical percentage that we report. I mean, so it looks like the tool doesn't even exist on those platforms, or at least we're not installing it. So I'm just going to say this is definitely a bug. I think that's actionable. We can move it to the top. Bugs at the top. And we can do a breakdown of, we have a lot of issues in the backlog. A lot of them are bugs. We can do a count. I think last time I checked it was something like 35. We may need some sort of a bug bash or bounties. I don't know. So what do we have? The ROS-bag Python reader URI differs depending on the format version. This is true. There are different formats of the ROS-bag 2. And this is related to ROS-bag 2 PyReader and Writer, which is currently disabled from the builds. That doesn't mean that you can't build it. Okay. Yep. Yeah, I think I understand this. We would just need I think a regression test to try the different formats. We should probably consider failing these. Got this one from the Build Farmer. I didn't even know that emoji existed. But yeah, we have a task on our queue right now to take a look at the stability, but we have sort of a across-the-board problem with ROS-bag 2 where the architecture of the tests makes it somewhat inherently unstable. We need to have some sort of, yeah, I don't know if patching individual tests is going to work because it keeps cropping up in different places, especially in these play and record tests. I think we need some sort of architectural change to make these tests a lot more deterministic. For now, I think that we should probably mark these xfail so that it doesn't mark the build farm as yellow because it's not useful information. The fact that it's failing a quarter of the time means that it's not really providing us with a lot of value in those nightly tests. So I'm going to say we will.
So do you, Emerson, know what these tests do?
So record end. Yeah.
I'll go for it.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was about to say that these tests, like, they do test the end-to-end performance, like the execution of ROS-bag 2. It's just that on Windows there's no way to gracefully like end the test or shut it down so that things can clean up after itself. There was an open issue, I can't find it right now, of using maybe like a keyboard input such that you can send keyboard input to the ROS-bag 2 CLI for like pausing or stopping, or some service that you can like call to stop running ROS-bag. I don't know if right now is the best time to discuss this, but I think having that feature for ROS-bag 2 would be helpful, not just for the test, but outside of that as well.
No, I agree completely. I think that the way that the record and play functions are structured make them inherently hard to test because they depend on being terminated in a really specific signal in order to stop running. I think what we want to do is we want to move that signal handling up to a higher level and have straightforward APIs that can be called for these things. I think that would make the tests a lot more reliable and would make the handling of that interruption be able to be centralized in one place, whereas right now it's copied in a few places, especially within the tests.
Yeah, would it be favorable to have like a ROS service that can be called and it can stop the execution of ROS-bag, or do we want to maybe go forward like a keyboard interface?
I don't think either of those is necessary to solve our problem here. I think what we want to do is have the, say for playback, right? You call play and it synchronously plays right now until it is done playing, unless you interrupt it with an actual signal, like Control C. I think what we want to do probably is play back in a thread and have that thread, the playback loop, have an actual trigger in there, some event that you can set, an atomic boolean or something like stop running, so that it can be gracefully and sort of API orientedly stopped.
So basically just have a signal handler in like the ROS2bag
Yeah, exactly. I'm thinking here in yeah, just like have a a mutex or whatever, something that you set that tells it to stop playing back and exit, which should allow our tests to be a lot more graceful as well, because then you don't depend on this Control-C behavior deep in the functionality. You only depend on it at the very top level. Like maybe you could do it as high as the actual CLI, ROS2 bag, which to me is the most appropriate place for that high level start stop, any keyboard handling. I don't think that's very appropriate for the C++ implementation layers.
Makes sense. I think there just needs to be like a close method or something that signals to the C
a stop method, which means that you would you would have to spin it up in a thread, but right now if you did that, there's still no way to interrupt it. So it needs to just have an API to stop it. So you could do thread play and then .stop whenever you feel like, and then you could expose that to a service. I think that could be useful if you wanted to maybe hook up some keyboard functionality to it. Like if you wanted to have, say, RViz control playback in a panel or something, that could be, yeah, I think you could enable a lot of cool behaviors, but the most important part is it's just allowing us to have more deterministic control over the behavior in a cross-platform way. Makes sense. Yeah.
So what I do remember is that the signal handler that is implemented in RCL CPP is actually not without the sins. So it's actually super convoluted because it's trying to to be super gracefully shutting down everything that's still running once you issue the SIG command. And it for us, like internally, we had to actually implement our own handler because that just never really worked well with in CI. So tests were always, not just unit tests, but actually also always hanging. So I'm not sure if that's the case here, but since you mentioned it, there is a couple of improvement potentials for the ROS signal handler.
Agreed. Yeah, I think part of it is that we want to get that signal handling out of the lower levels and yeah, get it all handled in one common, or at least at a higher level of the application, so that you don't have to think about it when you're doing playback of messages or whatever. But absolutely, I think that's one of the problems here for us. It's that it's never been reliable on Windows. And so, or in our CI, it definitely causes problems. So I'm not sure if it's exactly the same problem you guys saw, but it's definitely related. So I'm going to say that we have an action item to mark test failures as xfail. And can someone remind me, how do you do that? I mean, I guess I can look it up offline. I don't actually remember how you do that. Is that in the CMake lists?
Yes.
Okay. And we should assign someone. I'll assign myself for now and make sure that someone gets it, if not me. I think I commented on this one already, which is that there's just a bad default here, which is that when you're doing the CI build and it might be against a different distro, it pulls the master sources in this action. And so I think we have a a resolution here. We just need to do it. So I'm gonna put this at the top of the backlog.
I post the CMake command into the console, into the chat window.
Great. Maybe Aaron, if you could copy paste that out to our chat, because for some reason the chat window is just totally broken for me here. But screen sharing's working great and everything else. You'd think that chat would be the one easy part. Okay. Just a different Python 3 version. This is a really hard one. Yeah, whether you want to, let's see, prefer pip for Python packages, which is kind of difficult because it can clash with the package manager packages, and we try to package our ROS packages using the package manager, and if they don't have dependencies within that package manager, they can't be installed, at least not with a single step. So I don't know how much we want to get into the apt versus pip installation of dependencies for your packages here, but as much as I like to get newer versions, I've been fairly convinced in terms of the using apt versions because of conflicts. And this has come from dealing with like ROS distro.
And I think we had this question from users so many times, like if we release Debian packages, it needs to be, all dependencies needs to be Debian packages. Of course, people wish to use the later version on pip, but that's just not how it works. People can build from source against a newer version and use ROSDEP to install them, but that's why we also tell them if they have a ROSDEP key and it's a pip package only, the ROSDEP key should have a -pip suffix, because otherwise it's really opaque to the user using that key that he actually gets a pip package and will never be able to bloom or release a package.
And this might not be a consideration for some people. If you're building a private package that you are planning to deploy as an install directory, then it doesn't necessarily stop you from using pip dependencies. But yeah, I'm not. I'm just going to comment that I don't know how we solve this exactly. I think, this is labeled correctly as an enhancement, and I think it's a low priority unless someone has a suggestion for handling both cases gracefully, which architecturally, I don't know how we do that right now. Test. This is a test issue. Stephen, you needed this for something? I can take that as a no.
Sorry, yeah, we can close that out.
Cool.
When I was playing around with webhooks.
Gotcha. I would expect that this builds on Windows because it's part of the nightly CI runs. So it must have something to do with the GitHub CI environment specifically. Yeah, that's pretty strange. I don't think we need to go entirely into finding the cause here, but someone should figure this out at some point. I think that it has the information that an implementer needs to look at it. But considering the nightly build is successful, I'm not as worried, though it'd be nice if our action CI was set up in such a way that that passed as well. I just created this. It's more of an architectural change. I created this ROS tooling roadmap that covers cross-repository issues. I'm just using it as an issue holder. And we have these ROS actions, specifically action ROS CI, setup ROS, and action ROS lint, that have a lot of duplicated code in them. They also have a lot of duplicated or the same dependencies. So we have sort of a triply tripled up maintenance burden for their Dependabot PRs and any changes to their utilities. There's examples of other repositories that use a single repo to release multiple GitHub actions. That should reduce the maintenance burden a lot. I wouldn't say it's an immediate priority, but it's something that I'd like us to do at some point. So I'm just going to move this to the bottom of the backlog unless anyone has questions about it. It's harder for me to evaluate tickets that I wrote because I have a lot of context on it. Okay. And then lastly, we've got reach 80% code cov. And this is, the Rep 2004 doesn't really apply to this code, but I would like us to start considering the quality of our packages that are not, ROS Kekin packages still anyways. We can apply a lot of the concepts. And one thing I'd like to do is make sure that we get a higher code coverage on these actions. I think a lot of the bugs that have been reported is because there's not thorough enough testing. It's been really good that there's been community usage, which has surfaced a lot of these bugs, but it would have been nice that they didn't go out in the first place. And I think higher code coverage is one step towards helping that happen. So this one's pretty straightforward. Once we combine those three actions into a single repository, then I think we want to get that code cov up. Doing it before then will probably involve repeated code on the shared utility functions. So yeah, not worth the effort. But again, this is not an immediate priority. This is probably the most low priority right now. What I would like to see is, as we fix bugs, to make sure to include regression tests, which should bring that up over time as well. So that's something I'll try to enforce in reviews, is asking for tests where possible. So that's it for the new issues. Right now we have in review. Well, before we get to anything else, I want to check in here and there. Is there anything anyone really wanted to get to today?
I wanted to mention that I pushed the ROS launch remote design document that I mentioned a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, great.
And if you're interested, if you could take a look at it, and maybe we could set that up as a discussion for one of our breakout sessions.
Yeah, like maybe next week.
Maybe even next week, yeah, if you guys think you have time to look at it and no one else has something.
I did not have a topic for next week.
Right.
So this would be, let's see, it's not that many. Remote and multi-machine launching. Found it.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, I'd be really happy to talk about this. Multi-machine launching. To talk about that as a breakout session next week. We haven't been doing them just because we haven't had suggestions. I mean, I would like to talk about the cross-compile tool, but I've been so overloaded that I haven't had time to put together resources. So
for the cross-compile thing, also would be interesting. I know that QNX, the company behind QNX, is currently working on like getting their tool chain into shape that they can just build ROS2 for QNX easily. And first they did try to make it all pull requests, but then we revisited and they can actually keep a lot in the tool chain file. It might be just something good to sync with them at some point to see how do they do the cross compilation and how does that apply to our tool. Do they use some of our tools? Do they not use them? Why don't they use them? Could they benefit from them? Could our tools benefit from what they are doing? Just like interesting context, I think.
I agree. That is interesting context. I have a prototype branch right now that is able to actually cross-compile for Ubuntu on ARM rather than doing the emulated build, which is what we've been aiming for the last, year or so. It's been a long road. And it would be interesting to see what their toolchain file looks like. I have toolchain files for specifically, GCC, ARM.
When you get to it, and I know it's not time-wise like critical, important, or high priority, just ping me and I can get you the contact from the person who works on it on the QNX side.
Perfect. Yeah. I mean, if you want to give us a shared email ping, I think that would be really helpful to start the conversation whenever. Like, it's definitely on my mind, and I make changes on it little by little. So having that conversation anytime.
Yeah, I'll just pass the contact to you, and whenever you have time, you can reach out.
Yeah, thank you.
I think there's there's a top level meta ticket, and at some point he had a two chain file in his private repo somewhere.
Oh yeah, that's probably even a good way to reach him, because I told him to create this high level on the ROS2 argument, the high level QNX ticket, and he's pretty active on that one.
Okay.
I'll put the link in the chat window when I find it.
Perfect.
I clicked the wrong button.
I think I'm accepting this correctly. I don't know how this works. There we go.
I just posted a link in the chat. That's one thing I've seen he's been using.
Yeah. Cool. That sounds good. Anyways, Matt, thank you for that design, which I have not read, but I am looking forward to reading it. And I think that next week would be a great time for that discussion. So I'll make sure to post about the breakout session and not cancel it.
Sounds good.
I got one other note, which might be relevant for like the Qualcomm bundle and other packages you do, extensions you do for Qualcomm. Until now, it was usually an issue if people maintainers from like any Qualcomm extension want to release their packages, they can easily release to pip, right? But they can't really release a Debian package. Well, until now, I just told all the maintainers, hey, just ping me on the ticket after you made a tag, and then I just run the script, create the dab locally, and upload it via SSH to one of our servers. Which is okay, but certainly not a great way to do it, right?
Yep.
Because I always have to be in the loop, and people have to it's overhead for the people too. So usually a lot of packages releases get like new versions, but don't get released as Debian. I looked at an alternative where we can host the Debian packages, because on the other hand, on the ROS2 infrastructure side, we don't want to push them always like directly into our Bootstrap repo. We rather pull them from somewhere, from a known location.
Yep.
So since that's the direction where we want to go anyway, midterm, long term, I looked at alternative places, and there is like one hosting platform. It's packagecloud.io. It's a commercial service, but they have an open source plan which is free. And I talked with them over the last month, and basically there's a Qualcomm repo now on packagecloud just for trying at the moment. And that will be easy, that people who maintain an extension can create an account there, and I can just add them as an uploader to that package, which makes them able to, hopefully in the future, just release a Python package as before, and also create the Debian and upload it to that repo. And then the ROS2 Bootstrap repo pulls from that whenever we want the latest version of all the packages.
Okay, so that's whenever you run a sync.
Yeah, even before we run a sync, but you can basically pull in new versions whenever you want. For example, I don't know, sometimes we make a Catkin PKG release, and then we have to get those from the Bootstrap repos in the normal app repos. That's what we do, like out of band. And this will allow just maintainers to release whenever they feel ready, and they only have to set up an account at that website once, and afterwards they can just upload. I'll need to work on some scripting that you actually have that convenient and don't have to do it by hand. But we have something for our SSH upload. I think it will be super simple to update that package to just push it into this API.
Nice.
Yeah, and they not only host Debian packages, they can in theory host way more different things. So if we want RPMs in the future or whatever, that service does not care. You can upload kind of every artifact. So just as a heads up, that might be coming, and hopefully makes the life for a Qualcomm extension developer a little bit easier.
Makes sense. Yeah, I mean,
and my work easier. I mean, selfishly, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, automate away anything you have to do by hand, right? Because our team owns the Qualcomm bundle extension, which we don't work on here in this working group, but that's very relevant to me.
Oh, well, sorry.
Yeah.
Tooling, close enough.
It is a tool, yeah. And it's heavily used by RoboMaker right now. I don't know how much it's used outside of that, but.
And there are plenty of extensions from other people which have written one, but they have never bothered to ship a Debian package, right? And this will hopefully lower the barrier a lot, but it makes it easy for them to do.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe we'll reconsider releasing a cross-compile extension, although right now it's sort of wrapped the other way around.
So related to that and the code COF presentation that was mentioned before, there's also an Elco extension for Qualcomm, and I know that OSRF also has some Jenkins plugin that is displaying the code coverage. So maybe when it goes to when somebody presents that code COF coverage tool, they could also say, why the other two are not good.
Oh, yeah. I mean, right now in the actions, I think on an individual repository basis, we're just integrating with codecup.io. So, yeah.
Well, sometimes they also target different audience. I think one crucial thing, which I always think, is you need to be able to run locally. So I think the Qualcomm extension, the LCOF result one from JP, I think that's super valuable because you need to be able to run it locally. And then you have the presentation side on the CI side. That's fine if we can generate that, but at the end of the day, it's maybe not as nicely visible. And that's where the Jenkins plugin usually comes in, which just renders it in a way that you get like better overview about the status.
I think that's how the CodeCub is working as well. I believe we're calling it with CodeCub arguments to Qualcomm, and then CodeCub.io just does the rendering on the PR after we upload the whatever it is, coverage.xml file that gets output. Because I've definitely looked at it locally for our.
Yeah, I think the LCOF result Qualcomm plugin or that one basically gives you like, of course, I mean, it's a console, right? So it gives you like kind of an ASCII output of like what's your actual coverage.
Oh, I see. Okay.
It uses the same thing. It uses like, it invokes the compiler with C flags for coverage and profile arcs, and like, I mean, it's all built on the same technology, right?
Yeah. So anyhow, I mean, as part of our presentation, it's good to state also what is the related work. So, and there is already some. So I think they should mention that when we present CodeCov.
Cool. Sounds good.
The other question that I have here, I guess for you, Emerson and Karsten, since I haven't been active for probably a month, was there any work done towards the performance improvement for ROSBAC 2?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's been a little bit, but not a lot. I know Karsten's been, I guess he's here. He can talk for himself. But my team's been sort of focused on stabilizing after we split out into a separate team, which we've done. So we haven't done a lot of work on it this month. And my understanding is that Karsten was focused elsewhere this month as well. So we've had a little bit of implementation work towards one or two of the items, but they're not done yet. And that's let's see, default caching size. I have started on, but it's not done. And the other one is the arbitrary configuration for the storage plugin. So being able to pass a config file to SQLite. That one is also in progress. The one that's not in progress, if I remember correctly, is the asynchronous writing, which is the producer-consumer scheme. And that one, I think, will require a little bit of refactoring because we have this duplicated code right now between the compression writer and the non-compression writer. So I did put up a draft PR that proposes a restructuring that should deduplicate a lot of our code. So anyways, I guess my answer is yes, but quite slowly.
Okay.
So
thanks.
That's where we're at right now.
That's pretty accurate from my side here as well. Yeah. We did the other thing, which was like there was some community members reporting memory leaks. That was partially fixed, partially in a way that there's still some tests which are failing, even on ROSBAC 2 transport, which also comes into different things, where like maybe the tests are not written in a way that they're actually sustainable. Given that RCL, CBP shut down and all these things are not necessarily thread safe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're now starting to like heavily use the tool in AutoWare, so in the stack for autonomous driving. We're getting some new people, like full-timers that will work in the project from October on. might want to actually put them on fixing this fundamentals first, because I mean, one thing is that we're still using dashing there, so we're dealing with things like not all topics being recorded and so on, but certainly also have throughput issues. So we're not able to record as much as the data is being generated.
I think that we would certainly appreciate the help and would be happy to coordinate with any new contributors to help them get to the right architecture, because we've had some conversations about how we want things to be structured. We just haven't had time to do it.
Yeah, that's the biggest problem always.
Yeah.
Not enough hands.
I mean,
Okay,
Amazon,
thanks.
on that note though, the storage config file PR is actually kind of ready from my side, and I was holding it back because you mentioned you want to do the restructuring first.
Yeah, but I think that I maybe shouldn't hold it back on that, just because that's going to take a little bit longer. So I can go give it a second pass.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
I think I was being a little bit optimistic in thinking we can make those changes faster, but I've had so much to do.
Fair enough. Okay.
Okay, I'll go take another look at that one, and let's try to get it through so that that way we can actually have one of the 3 low hanging fruits checked off.
Yeah. Okay.
So we're now running basically towards the end of the meeting. I'm going to be out at the next meeting. I'm going on vacation on the 7th. And I believe the next meeting is scheduled for the 11th. So I'll be there for the breakout meeting on the 4th. But we're going to need to have someone else run this meeting or cancel it on the 11th. I'll be somewhere on the Oregon coast, probably out of service range. So
good for you.
Thank you. I haven't taken any vacation in basically since we all went home in March, so I'm looking forward to it.
So yeah, is anyone else outside of Amazon interested in giving it a shot, or otherwise we can find somebody on the team?
I'll be on vacation as well, so I'm out here.
Oh yeah, both you and me are out for half of September, so that does that decreases our bandwidth ability a lot.
Yeah, so I'm actually not jumping onto myself for the same exact reason. So I actually think I might have one scheduled. But yeah, we'll look into it. We might be able to find a fill-in.
Okay. To fill in or cancel. Cool. Okay, that's all I had to talk about today. I'll go through and we'll take a look. For now, I'll say add code owners to all repos. Double check. Okay. Thanks everyone for coming today, and we'll see you next week if you want to talk about remote launching and multi-machine.